and I've seen a number of wet ones, and they're usually fairly dramatic. So yes, we'll hope the rain stays away. Hopefully, Kelvin, you'll have some cars with you down on the grid very shortly as well. Kelvin, who are you looking to try and chat to here when they make their way down to you on the grid?
I'll be chatting to Phil Keen's teammate, Adam Ballon, who I'll be chatting to just in a few moments now. What I think is quite interesting for those guys, obviously, it's the two Lamborghinis at the front two spots here at the grid. Just behind, directly behind Adam's teammate, they're carrying an extra 30 kilos of a ballast for the silver pairing. So I think Adam's teammate Phil will have that advantage early on in the first stint, and whether he feels that will be a threat towards the end when the tyres start to wear off. Obviously, the guys carrying the extra weight will be a disadvantage for them.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I think this is going to be a fascinating race. That's what everyone's saying, and I'm hoping that it will deliver on that promise. And the cars, as you can see, are now starting to make their way out onto the circuit. We've got a dry circuit for now then. Kelvin definitely is correct in that there are some, you can't see them from this camera shot, but there are some pretty ominous looking grey clouds sort of lingering towards Old Hall Corner, but I don't think that we're going to see any rain. We had some torrential weather here a couple of years ago, didn't we? And the second race had to be cut short as a result. But Oulton Park in the sunshine, Joe, I know I'm biased, I know it's my local circuit, and I will tell anyone who'll listen that this is the best track in the country, but it really does look good. We've got summer sunshine. We've got a lot of people here as well enjoying maybe one of their first visits trackside this season. We've got GT cars looking resplendent in the sunshine. It's a nice place to spend a weekend, isn't it?
Yeah, I don't know what filter Hayfisher use on the cameras, but the north looks pretty grim normally, but here it's it is beautiful. It's the old parkland nature of the circuit here in Donington Park, old country estates where the obviously wealthy owners wanted to do something a bit different to building a zoo, and they built a racetrack, and it really does flow. We'll go on about it so much. The corners all lead into one another. The only exceptions are the two chicanes, which are introduced for safety, so they slow down the nature of the circuit, but they're still quite good fun. You can really attack the curbs. You'll see cars riding right over them. The Bentley especially rides it so well. It'll be up on two wheels and looks quite brutal, but actually it's the shortest way around the circuit, so it can be quicker in its nature. And I think the other thing unique to British circuits, but Oulton Park specifically, is the lack of runoff. There's no tarmac runoff, it's straight to grass, so if you do make a mistake, it's normally a big problem, and that's why we see so many spectacular incidents here.
Yes, which thankfully we avoided in race one. We had that one off for the Academy Ford Mustang in GT4, which promoted this car on your screen up an extra position, but arguably, Joe, they should have been second. This Toyota from Speedworks that is brand new to the championship, no one really knew what to expect from it, and I'm reminded a lot, actually, of the first appearance last year in the championship of the GT4 Ford Mustang. People looked at it and thought, oh, I'm not sure that's going to suit British circuits. Turned up at Oulton Park, the windiest and tightest of British circuits, and immediately they were the pace setters. What Speedworks have done with this Toyota is very, very similar, and it's equally impressive.
Yeah, definitely, and Speedworks are obviously a really, really successful team in touring cars, but they do have GT pedigree as well. They used to run the Ginetta and a Chevrolet Corvette, so they know it. I do like, we had an interview with Mickey Sargent earlier, who's my team managers from a bygone area, and I lightly blame the driver for getting the pit stop time wrong. So I think, had it been that, I think 3/10 they were under their pit stop, they would have been on for a mega result. So I think the nature of the circuit, and like I said earlier about the curbs, this car really can attack the curbs, and that makes it so much better for the driver in terms of options of line. If you can't use the curbs, your bluff's being called almost with the line you can take. But if you are able to manipulate the car over curbs and go that shorter distance, it might lead to you being able to overtake the car in front or get away from the car behind you.
Big Bentley pulls up for Team Parker Racing, car number 66, Nick Jones and Scott Mulvin. Scott Mulvin will be starting this second race. It's the pro driver in any Pro-Am combo that will start race number 2, because the way qualifying works, because this is a 2-race weekend, the Am driver in their session, that sets the grid for race 1, the race that they will start, and then the pro driver goes out in a separate qualifying session to set the grid for the second race, which is the race that they will start, and that's why we get these very different looking grids. But that Bentley, unfortunately, has been rather too close to the back of the grid this weekend for my liking. It's a brilliant looking and sounding car. The earth shakes every time it comes through, especially if you go and watch out in the trees up at Druids and Lodge. And a car that had success, of course, here at the start of last year with JRM. They were able to win the first round of the championship in 2019. Sadly, the JRM squad, not able to race with us this season, but Team Parker Racing are, and they are hoping for some slightly better results, I'm sure, as the rest of the year goes on. So the bulk of the grid then is now in position. We've spoken a lot about GT3, and in GT4 it was TF Sport that came to the fore, with Conor O'Brien and Patrick Kibble getting the win. Patrick Mathieson and Jordan Collard were second, with Daniel Vaughan and Jamie Caroline in third position. We'll get back onto GT4 in a moment though, but first of all we need to have a word with our GT3 pole sitters, and it's the nearly men of the championship. Barwell Motorsport yet again just missed out on the championship a year ago, but they've got their cars locking out the front row of the grid, haven't they, Kelvin?
Yes, we have. Adam, I've raced with you before in the GT4, so I know just what a great driver you are. Obviously last year you came a close second. This year it's a Lamborghini again, with Phil again. But you're optimistic for the challenge this year.
Yeah, got to try and go one better and win the thing.
And as I was saying before, obviously the car fundamentally the same car, but there's a new compound now with Pirelli.
Yeah.
So you've had to make some adjustments in the off-season and test and just change the car a little bit to suit that new compound.
Yeah, that's right. Actually, the compound changed it quite a lot more than we thought. So we've actually had to do quite a bit of testing. Obviously, been very limited amounts of testing available, but we think we've done a good job. The team's done a great job actually, and I think it's in a good place.
And as I was saying before, we've obviously got Sandy over there next to you. They're carrying an extra 30 kilos of ballast, being the silver pairing.
Yeah.
So hopefully that should give Phil there that little bit of breathing space, and hopefully he can pull away and make that 30 kilos count.
Yeah, no, exactly. That's what we hope. I want a bit of breathing space because there's some fast people, hopefully. Well, there will be fast people behind me when I take over, so I've got every bit of gap.
How are you feeling at the minute? Because you're not in the car, so you're obviously a little bit more relaxed, but when will your nerves start to kick in, if they do kick in?
I think they kick in as you start getting into the car, basically. Right then it starts becoming real. So as you're going down the pit lane on the limiter, that's when you're like, okay, here we go.
Well, have a great race, guys.
Nice one, thank you.
Thank you, guys. Back to you.
Yeah, thanks, Kelvin. Adam Ballon then, as I said, came so close in that dramatic championship decider. I think I needed the extended lockdown period just to get over Donington Park. It was almost 12 months ago, Joe, but what a way to round out the championship that was. You've got to feel, though, for Barwell. I mean, that was arguably the closest they came, and they were robbed right at the end of the race, obviously after that slightly controversial contact down at the old hairpin.
Yeah, it was a hard one to take for Barwell, and their curse at Donington continued. But luckily for them, with the rejig calendar, the decider is now at Silverstone, so hopefully they can shake that one off and get a bit lucky. It's great to see Adam back. It's I think so easy to forget that he is an amateur in this sport. So he's driving these super fast cars at super fast circuits, but in the day, in the week, he's doing his business. He was Mr. Innocent Smoothies, I believe, so he was crushing his apples and putting his raspberries in his bottle and selling it to hippies, and now he's racing cars, so it's brilliant. And for them to be so close to a pro, I can only say, when I'm in a car and I'm racing and I'm like, right, that's a brilliant lap, and I see an amateur get in and get within 2 seconds of me, I think it's amazing how little they spend in the car but how much they get out of it. And I think that adds such a dynamic to the racing. When you see the amateurs out there, they are a little bit more mistake prone, purely because it's not what they're doing day in, day out.
Yeah, I feel like sometimes the amateur drivers don't get the love they deserve. I mean, we refer to them as the slower drivers because they are slower, but slow they are not. I mean, it is a really, really impressive performance that we see from some of the top AM drivers in the championship. Right, back down to the grid now with Kelvin. Kelvin, who have you got?
I've got Rob Collard here. Rob, I've got to say, Joe in the commentary box has really been singing your praises. Coming from the British Touring cars, he was saying how impressed he is by your switch to the GT cars, yes, and your pace has been absolutely formidable. So that's some pretty good, good applause there from the man upstairs.
Oh, thank you for everybody giving me some compliments. It's really, really exciting to come to the British GT Championship and drive such cars like the Lamborghini Hurricane. Is absolutely fabulous. I wish I'd have done it a few years ago now, but it's brilliant. And also I've got my son Jordan here in the GT4. He's doing a great job. He's had a podium as well today, so really, really pleased and can't wait to get in the car when Sandy hands it over in a minute.
So it's a real family affair, and you've got your son further down, yeah, you're here. So hoping for a good result today?
Yeah, hopefully. We had a P4 in race 1. We're now starting P2, pole for silver. So hopefully we can come in virtually in sort of top 2 or 3. Hopefully we might get some silverware for race 2.
Excellent. Well, all the best, mate.
Thank you.
Back to you guys.
It's great to have Rob Collard on board, isn't it, Joe? I mean, he's a star name in British motorsport, but someone, again, who I don't believe gets the credit he deserves. He never did win the British Touring Car Championship, but if a team wanted a reliable, solid driver that they knew could win races and score points, Rob was pretty close to the top of everyone's list.
Yeah, I think tenacious would be how I described his British touring car career, and he's come over to British GT, and there's always a bit of a standoff between British touring cars and British GT. British touring cars always puffs out its chest, it's the British elite motorsport, but professionalism-wise, there's more professional drivers in British GT earning a living, and I think that's probably what Rob's what we've seen. In British touring cars has a great fan base. I think British GT is starting to get and understand that more. There's a huge following on Facebook, British GT fans, where all the fans kind of talk to each other online with the forum and stuff, and it is getting more and more media coverage, and I think we just need to show how good these cars are and how close the racing can be.
Yeah, shout out to the British GT fans as well. I know many of them were planning a visit to OULTON Park today, so I hope you're enjoying yourself out in the sun, and I'm sure you're all enjoying hearing and seeing these fantastic beasts out on circuit once again after the extended off-season. Racing well and truly back with a bang. There you can see the GT4 cars towards the rear end of the field, where it will be Balf Motorsport, actually, who have pole position. Ewan Hankey and Mia Fluid didn't have much luck in the first race of the day, with Mia putting in a strong stint, but we believe that Ewan Hankey had it off when he went out onto the track. Then he had to serve a pit stop penalty, so the 21 car on pole position with TF Sports 97, the car that finished third in race number 1 in GT4, that will be started by Jamie Caroline, and we'll have Daniel Vaughan jumping in for the second stint. HHC and TF Sport, the top 2 cars from race 1 in GT4, sharing the second row of the grid for race number 2. So the grid has, I think, more or less been cleared. They're about to head out onto that green flag lap, and you can see just how different the grid looks now. Those McLarens, you have to look a long way down the order to find, for example, that car, the Jensen Team Rocket RJN car that won the first race. Sandy Mitchell makes everyone nervous by not leaving his grid position quite as quickly as he would have liked to. He does get the black and white Lamborghini underway. Barwell Motorsport 1-2, Ram Racing 2nd and 3rd. Interesting to see how those two get on. They were saying off air what a good job that particularly the 69 car did in that previous race. Here though is the grid. It's Phil Keane for Barwell on pole, with Sandy Mitchell in the Silver Cup car alongside him. Then the silver Ram Racing car of Yelmer Berman and the Pro-Am, all the way around, sorry, Pro-Am number 6, and then the silver 69 of Patrick Kuyala. Marcus Glutton and Ollie Wilkinson share row number 3, JMH Auto for the local man, and Ollie Wilkinson for Optimum. Matt Griffin's Ferrari is 7th, with Jack Mitchell in the first of the 2 2Cs Motorsport McLarens that looked so strong in race 1 on the 4th row. Row number 5, rounding out the top 10, is Dean McDonald, his teammate, and Michael O'Brien, the race 1 winner and championship leader, but of course they will have a success penalty to carry now after finishing first in the previous race. Row 6 for Sam Neary and Dennis Lind, a pair of Pro-Am drivers, Mercedes ahead of Lamborghini, and then at the back of the GT3 field, 13th on the grid for Scott Malvern in the Bentley. Then it's Ewan Hankey, pole position for the number 21 Balf Motorsport McLaren. Second place in GT4 on the 8th row of the grid for Jamie Caroline and Jordan Collard, son of Rob Collard, whose car starts second in the GT3 ranks. Then it's Patrick Kibble and Matt Cowley, 4th and 5th respectively in GT4. Aston Martin ahead of Ford Mustang, and those two teams did battle in the previous race. And then rounding out the top 20 overall, James Kell in Toyota and Andrew Gordon Colebrook in the Century Motorsport BMW, who didn't really get to mention much in the previous race. Gus Bowers for HHC Motorsport in the McLaren is next, alongside Luke Stechakowski in the Tagiwa liveried Century Motorsport run BMW M4 GT4. And that takes us to the back of the field. So race 1 dominated by McLarens. Race 2 though will have a very different feel. The pro drivers starting in the Pro-Am cars with the Silver Cup entrance, of course, That means that this first part of the race is when they may struggle, but they'll then hope to come back into it in the second half. But what we saw in race 1 is that the teams that got the track position by the midway point were by and large able to keep hold of it through the second half of the race. Will that be the case again, though, in race number 2? Let's find out. Phil Keane and Sandy Mitchell on the front row of the grid, looking back at the 2 Ram Racing Mercedes behind of Jelmer Berman and Patrick Kujala. So, side by side, over Deers Leap in the sunshine at Alton Park. Round number 2 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship gets underway. Who makes a good start? It's going to be Kujala from the outside of row number 2, who tries to go to the outside, then goes to the inside. And look at Marcus Clutton on the inside in the green. Lamborghini goes 3rd. Surely not. Gets stuck behind the number 72 of Phil Keane. And Kujala comes back in there, back wheels down the avenue. That's so close to disaster. Phil Keane leads the way. Sandy Mitchell second. Kujala side by side with Clutton, who goes round the outside through Cascades. Fantastic start from the local man. He's a race instructor here at Alton Park. He knows every inch of this place, and he's used that to good effect on lap 1. On the inside goes Jelmer Berman as well, back into 4th place ahead of Kujala. Well, that, Joe Osborne, was a lot more feisty than the start of race 1. Brilliant stuff there from Marcus Clutton.
What a boy. What
no.
We saw that car going slow round Island Bend, so Mikey O'Brien's had a problem there. Looks like he's rejoined without too much more issue, but that was so aggressive on the 2 Mercedes. He literally went to him, I'm putting my car in. If you're going to turn in, it's your fault now. And carried on all the way down the avenue to Cascades to do it on Kujala. And that was absolute, honestly, that's the best start I've seen from a British GT3 car in the last decade.
That was incredible. Marcus Clutton, if you hadn't heard of him before, I think you're all well aware of why those who spent a lot of time here at Alton Park sing his praises. Brilliant stuff. So Clutton then into 3rd. It's a Lamborghini 1-2-3 with the 2 Mercedes having now, well, they're back in grid order, even though the best of the starters between the Ram cars was Patrick Kujala in the 69 car, but it is Jelmer Berman in the green and black number 6 car that he'll share with Ian Loggy in this race that is into 4th place. Everyone down into Lodge then at the end of the first lap. A shame to see the number 2 car in trouble. Hopefully Michael O'Brien's got no damage in the car that won the first race, but with a pit stop penalty to serve later on, as well as a success penalty by virtue of him winning the previous race. His race is not looking great, nor though is the race for the number 8 car, Richard and Sam Neary. It's Sam that started the race, the son of Richard, and he's had a spin sadly coming out of Lodge Corner. Quite easy to do that with cold tyres, isn't it? Yeah,
definitely, especially with a bit of exit curb, a bit dusty, you can easily loop around. GT3s have probably settled down a little bit. I think GT4s, by the looks of it, Caroline has got in front of Hankey at the start, so maybe benefited from everything that was kicking off in front. And actually we see Neary pit as well, so maybe it was a little bit more of a problem than just a simple spin. But Keane out front, we'll say that a few times over the season, I'm sure, but yeah, to have a Lamborghini 1-2-3 after a McLaren 1-2-3-4 in the race, it's interesting how a manufacturer suddenly gets a bit of a break and they all kind of group together.
The difference in this race is that whereas in race 1 the top 6 cars at this stage were all Silver Cup entrants, here there's a mix. You've got the Pro-Am car, so the pro driver of Phil Keane leading, but then Sandy Mitchell as a silver driver. I know we're only a lap and a half into the race, but he's doing a good job so far. He's fallen back a bit from Phil Keane, but not right into the clutches of the pro drivers of Marcus Clutton and Jelmer Berman behind. So there's a real mix of experience and speed at the front of the field this time around, which should hopefully provide a little bit more overtaking than we saw in the early stages of race 1. In fact, Clutton is not attacking Sandy Mitchell. Instead, he's defending in the JMH Autos Lamborghini from Jelmer Berman. Jelmer Berman had a second place finish here a couple of years ago in the wet, was chasing down Phil Keane actually in the final stint of that race, didn't quite manage to get there in time, but Jelmer Berman looks a bit quicker than the Lamborghini. 2 very different cars here as well. You've got the mid-engine Lamborghini, the big front-engine Mercedes. Where do you think, taking that into account, Jelmer might have a chance to get through?
So the Mercedes is super strong aerodynamics-wise, so the higher speed corner will be stronger than the Lamborghini. So here through Island is very quick into a big brake zone, but Clutton, as you said as an instructor, he knows all the tricks of the trade round here. So I honestly don't see Berman getting past him for the whole stint. And the interesting bit is obviously Clutton's teammate John Seal was a bit off the pace, so he was the slowest in the AM qualifying. So then it's going to be an interesting dynamic when Berman hands over to Loggy and when Kujala hands over to Han. There's going to be a bit of a cork in the bottle, I feel, in this mid-pack.
Yes, well, right now, Jelmer Bourbon is forcing Marcus Clutton to drive defensively, so you've almost got that cork in the bottle effect now, not because Marcus Clutton is slow, but because he's not able to go as quickly as he could if he wasn't having to watch his mirrors so much. There is Ollie Wilkinson, 8th place for the OULTON Motorsport McLaren that ran inside the top 3 all race long, really, in race number 1. But the real battle is this one behind the Lamborghini of Clutton. You've got Clutton, Berman, Kujala, Jack Mitchell, then Griffin, Matt Griffin in the 51 Ferrari there, ahead of Ollie Wilkinson and Dean McDonald. Dennis Lynn down in 10th position, and Scott Mulvin rounding out the GT3 runners. In GT4, by the way, it is Jamie Caroline that leads the way from Ewan Hankey. So we've had a change in GT4. TF Aston Martin getting ahead of the Balf Motorsport McLaren, and just outside the window, the Academy Motorsport Ford Mustang heading out of the pit lane after an unscheduled stop. So there's been a fair bit of shuffling in both classes, but in GT4 it's Aston Martin back on top.
Yeah, and we see actually that car 97 getting a track limits warning, turn 1. We spoke about it a lot in race 1, but these concrete runoff areas are not to be used legally. They actually have pressure sensors in which take a picture of the car, so they have to be careful of there. And for fans at home, if you are interested in getting a bit more insight, you can see all the live timing that we've got here on TSL timing, Tango Sierra Lima timing, and it's really good to get an insight for the sector times and speed trap. So it's not us being geniuses working out the gaps. We have got a lot of information to go on here.
Yeah, I can barely count to 5 on a good day, so yeah, the timing screen is probably the most important bit of kit up here in the commentary box, and yeah, it is perfectly accessible for you guys at home as well, especially when we're getting to some of the longer races later on this year, where watching lap times and gaps developing over a stint really starts to become significant. Right now, though, all of the action is on track. They're almost to tail again here. The top 2 getting away here. Phil Keane sets the fastest lap at 1:34.9. Sandy Mitchell, though, only a 1/10 of a second slower than him, only a 1.5 seconds behind. Sandy is a silver graded driver. He should not be as quick as Phil Keane, but he is.
Yeah, he's doing a really great job. He's obviously been in the Lamborghini for a few years now. Lamborghini think of him very highly. He's on their junior program, so he might not be so much of a household name as Phil Keane is at the moment, but I think in the future he definitely will be. And at this point, sort of, what are we, 7 minutes into the race, he would definitely take a 1.4 second gap to Phil, in the mindset of thinking, I think Rob Collard's probably 1.4 seconds quicker than Ballon. So even though they're teammates, it will get pretty interesting, and I'm sure Mark Lemmer, the evil dictator at Barwell, will have a battle plan set out for them. It is a championship of paying customers, so if Collard is quicker than Ballon, he will do everything he can to get round him.
Yeah.
This battle here is going to be interesting now, because it is so hard to overtake here, so it's going to be who wants it the most and which cars are strong. Here we have Caroline leading that GT4 category. He's done a really good job, obviously getting past Ewan Hankey at the start, and he looks like he's got good pace. So does the other TF car there. He's the one that looks like he's hustling Ewan a little bit. Both pretty similar in line round there, but again, a bit like the Mercedes and Lambo, completely different outfit of engine configuration. McLaren is the V8 twin-turbo carbon fibre tub. The Aston Martin is just the V8 out the front, normal aluminium honeycomb chassis. So the McLaren should be a little bit quicker in the corners, and the Aston should be a bit quicker in the straights. And that's to try and even it out, so that Aston Martin will have more power than the McLaren to make up for its inadequacies in the corner, basically.
And thinking ahead to the pit stop window as well, don't forget both of these yellow Aston Martins for TF Sport were on the podium in the previous race. They will therefore have success penalties to serve. The 95 car that won the race will have the longest amount of time. Basically, it's a 10 seconds that gets added on to your minimum pit stop time if you won the previous race. So 95, the car that's applying the pressure to you and Hankey, will have a 10-second longer pit stop, but even the 97 in front will spend 5 seconds longer in the pit lane. So that, no doubt, is going through Ewan Hankey's mind. He knows that as long as he stays within 5 seconds of the leader, he should still see Mia Fluke come out with the race lead after the pit stops.
Yeah, and with them being Pro-Am as well in GT4, they benefit from 14 seconds less in the pit stop. So when you add all of that up, that 95 car is going to be stationary for 24 seconds extra. And that is the whole of Sector 1 here, for example. So that's 3 corners they will be ahead. Mia, being an amateur, will obviously need to have a look in her mirrors, but Mia's super fast, so she won't lose 24 seconds to the 95 car, but maybe the 97 or that 58 car of Jordan Collard that we saw, that will be another interesting dynamic. So I appreciate there's a lot of plates spinning here in terms of what to keep an eye on and stuff, but that blue McLaren there is going to have a 14-second advantage on all the other GT4 cars after the pit stops.
Yes, indeed, and that is the fascination when we get into, obviously, the first race of the year. There are no pit stop penalties to be applied, but later on in the season, that does start to become a factor. This is, if anyone ever doubts whether or not it's really hard work driving a GT car around Alton Park, this is a good way of proving that it is. This is Jamie Caroline. I think he's hopping his way over the curb through the Britain chicane, and Joe, you can really see here the forces that he's having to sit through there, hammering over those curbs, the rapid change of direction. It's getting very hot in that cockpit as well. And this, I would say, from an outsider's point of view, is possibly one of the most physically demanding tracks we race at.
Yeah, definitely with the curb usage, that really throws the body around. You'll see how much his head moves around left to right, and that's him looking into the next corner. So obviously at the speed you're travelling, you need to be looking a lot further than you would on the motorway, unless you do 130 miles an hour on the motorway, but you need to be that much further ahead with your vision to know exactly where you're going. And that's where the good drivers remain calm. The further you look, the more time you've got to think and react about what's happening, and that's when you miss accidents as well. So there's only positives for that. But yeah, considering we're 10 minutes in, he was quite a sweaty Betty already, I think.
Yes, it's hard work out there, but we are enjoying the action they're producing. Look how close this still is here, with Marcus Clutton wriggling away on the brakes down into Hislop chicane, and the two Mercedes right behind him, of Jelmer Berman and Patrick Kujala, breaking away slightly now from Jack Mitchell. There are the two Barwell Motorsport Lamborghinis out in front though. Phil Keane setting lap times in the 35.2s, exactly the same as Sandy Mitchell. So yeah, when you consider that Rob Collard is going to take over that car in the second stint, I do think there's a chance that they could be on for a race victory. Lamborghini 1, 2, 3, as I said, there's Clutton, Berman, Kujala, Mitchell, Griffin, then a small gap back to Wilkinson and McDonald, and then another small gap back to Dennis Lind and Scott Malvern. Now, Dennis Lind, when he arrived in the championship halfway through last year, blew everyone away, not only with his pace, but his racecraft. But for whatever reason this weekend, they haven't been on the pace, WPR Motorsport. Now, I watched practice and qualifying yesterday trackside, a lot of which I spent down near Cascade. That big bump on the way into Cascade, all of the Lamborghinis seemed to be struggling there. They were all really unsettled over that bump. Is that a problem that you would expect the Lamborghini to have? I always previously thought of it as being so well balanced.
Yeah, with the engines in the back, there's a lot of weight over that rear axle, so if the damping's not quite right, then it can be a real handful. And might just be the engineering ethos of the WPI team. They've gone a particular way with their Lamborghini. They're all different teams. For example, if they've got a softer spring on the rear, the car won't be as good over those bumps. And maybe Barwell and JMH have gone the other way, and that's why we've got three Lambos at the front and they're towards the back. But when we go to Silverstone, say, it might work a lot better. So it's frustrating as a driver sometimes when you're just in a car and it's just not working. You literally just want to rip your helmet off and scream. It's like those mornings you wake up and everything goes wrong, you crack your eggs into the sink, not the frying pan, and you just want to go back to bed. And it looks like it's been a long weekend for them, because Igo and Lind are both rapid. There's no sort of doubt in their credentials, but that car is well off the boil this weekend, unfortunately.
Yeah, I'm just looking back at their practice pace, and they did have a problem in one of the practice sessions, I seem to recall. Yeah, they were 7th fastest in the first free practice, and they were down in 12th in practice too, so it's clearly been an ongoing problem, and I think they'll be quite glad to get Alton Park out of the way. On board then with Patrick Kujala, heading into OULTON. Some brilliant onboard footage that we've enjoyed so far today here at Alton Park, showing not only the close quarters nature of the racing, but the flowing and undulating and bumpy nature of the Alton Park circuit. There is Dennis Lind, who we were talking about, and I'm hearing they're under investigation for what I don't know. 10-second stop-go penalty. I'll tell you about this first. For car number 8. So car number 8 is being given a 10-second stop-go penalty, which is Sam Neary, but we believe that 18, which is Dennis Lind, is under investigation for car number 8. Now, that doesn't make much sense. I wonder if there's a typo on our timing screen. That's supposed to say car 18, 10-second stop-go penalty. I'm not too sure. But there was an incident, we believe, between those two cars, and car 8 has been given the penalty. So
I wonder if there was contact between Lind and Neary, so that's the penalty for Lind, and then we're getting a penalty for Neary for doing something wrong in the pit stop that he had to come in for after the contact with 18. So both are being penalised for separate incidents, but yeah, we didn't quite see that. So maybe we were saying Neary just lost the rear on the last corner on the first lap, but maybe there was a bit of a push from behind. There's no marks on that WPI car. You expect the damage to be front left, but all looks clean at the moment. As we look at Neary's car, again, the rear right of that one looks clean. He's circulating some clean, fresh air. So great for Sam Neary. First time in the jump ship racing with his dad. Speaking with him earlier, it's very much about getting experience, getting used to it. They are in that older spec Mercedes, so are slightly at a disadvantage compared to the two Ram racing cars, which are the Evo updates. Better brakes and better aerodynamics is what I understand is the update on that Mercedes.
Yeah, indeed. And those two cars, by the way, would have started together, 8 and 18. They were 12th and 13th, respectively, on the grid. So it would make sense if they'd come together, but we're still sort of trying to piece it all together ourselves. Battle here, then, between Jack Mitchell and Matt Griffin. And Griffin's really closed in over the last lap or so. The Ferrari looks a little bit stronger. They're also coming into some traffic now. That looks like the Tagiwa Century Motorsport BMW just in front of them of Luke Sedjakovsky, which does its best to stay out of the way. Which way do we go? We'll go left this time. So Jack Mitchell does find the way through. And Matt Griffin, the pro driver. And this is another part of the stint in which the pro drivers tend to excel. Not only are they naturally a bit quicker than some of the silver drivers, but their consistency over a race stint. This is the 10th lap of the stint now. The tyres are starting to go off, especially on the heavier Silver Cup cars, and this is maybe where Matt Griffin is starting to find an edge.
Yeah, definitely. It looks like the McLaren's pretty strong everywhere that we've seen from the onboard at the moment. Just trying to see if Matt can gain on him through Druids. Looks like pretty even, to be honest, and yeah, he's just going to be sat in that aero wake of the McLaren, so it's going to be hard for him to get much closer. Car looked quite leery on the brakes there over the first bump into Lodge. Good traction, you can see on the dash all the lights, the rev lights, the gear number, as we pan back to third place. And Clutton's just doing his job. He knows the circuit so well, as I said, and I really don't think Berman will be able to do much about that, to be honest. As we see the BMW, you can get a good appreciation of the speed difference actually when you pan from class to class, and feels a lot in the car, but also looks a lot externally, as we see Dennis Lind is now starting to ramp up the pressure on Mcdonald.
Yeah, both of those 2C Motorsport cars seem to have lost pace pretty much at the same time, so that's interesting. Maybe some setup tweaks to be made there for long run pace. There's the leader, Phil Keane. Haven't seen much of him, but he and Sandy Mitchell are still less than 2 seconds apart, and they are now heading through past the leaders in the GT4 category. Phil Keane's got 3 more GT4 cars to get past, the first of which is going to be the TF Sport car just ahead of him, look, of Jordan Collard, excuse me. No, Patrick Kibble was right the first time, and so as they turn through the right-hander at Druids, just definitely losing time there, Phil Keane, and Sandy Mitchell will have gained a 10th or so out of all of that, but he makes the move stick on the run underneath the Paul Warwick Bridge into Lodge Corner, and Sandy Mitchell is going to gain here again, I think, because he's going to catch that Aston Martin across the start-finish straight. He may even get past Ewan Hankey before they get to Old Hall Corner. Phil Keane has no. Sandy Mitchell won't quite get there, but the gap did come down by about half a second that time. So Sandy Mitchell taking advantage of the lap traffic. He's going to catch Ewan Hankey down the straight, and that's exactly what we were talking about in race 1. He didn't quite know which way Ewan Hankey was going to go. He expected him to stay left, and he didn't. He went right, and that almost caught him out. Yeah,
you can see GT4s are trying to go around their own business, and you do find the better GT4 cars, the driver's got time to put an indicator on, so it looks like they've knocked it by mistake, but they're just trying to signal, obviously, which side they're staying to help everyone. And the GT4s can save a lot of time themselves by managing the traffic better. So at the moment, we're not really losing too much time. It's really when you get a cluster of GT4 cars that you can suddenly bleed 2 or 3 seconds out of a lap. But I'd say Sandy's had the rub of the green so far in terms of it, and the gap's back down to 1.3 seconds. And it's actually now grown to 11.5 back to this car. Clutton, big hit on the curb. Again, that damping of a Lamborghini looks like it doesn't like a big sudden input. So on the dampers, you've got 4 sites of adjustment, which maybe I shouldn't get into because I don't really understand. But you've got slow speed and high speed, compression and rebound, so you can really change so much of it. And again, you can see that happening with the Ferrari. So he's got a rear left suspension, I would say, by the looks of it, or rear right. You can see his left hand is quite a lot down on the steering wheel to go straight. He's on the radio to the team, so for me that's a rear suspension, a toe link, for example, and that might have just been a curb strike. Let's get a replay. So the Ferrari with the white bonnet in the background going down the inside, even contact with the child. So it was that. So front right to rear left, and it looks like they make them strong in Tokyo. I don't quite know where the child's made, but that Maranello Ferrari definitely has come off worse, and unfortunately that will be race over for them. That will be a 30-minute job to repair, so with only 40 minutes remaining there will be no point for that.
That is a shame as well, because they were going strong, weren't they? They've been given a warning for exceeding track limits at turn 1. That, quite frankly, is the least of their worries now. But yeah, the Ferrari of Matt Griffin and Duncan Cameron out of the race. Now, what I was about to point out before that all kicked off is that Jelmer Berman took advantage of that moment for Marcus Klutman at the chicane a lap ago and took over third place. So Jelmer Berman gets the Ram Racing Mercedes into third, breaks the 1-2-3 lockout for Lamborghini, and Matt Griffin brings the Ferrari in. Well, they've got a new tyre there ready, but we've already kind of worked out that their troubles run a little bit deeper than just a flat tyre. So changes then in GT4, changes in GT3 as well, and Jelmer Berman weaving his way past the podium fight in GT3, already gapping Marcus Klutman as well, so it's clear that he was a little bit quicker than Marcus. The trouble is, he's 15 seconds off the race lead now, Jelmer Berman. That's how much time he lost.
Yeah, definitely. As we see the inners of the Ferrari, so the suspension that will be broken will be hidden behind that brake disc. It will be a little metal bar basically. It's only about 10 millimeters in diameter, but it's not designed to take that sideways impact that it had, so it does bend normally when brake, to be honest. But yeah, that's them done. So it's going to be interesting to see where Kajala can sit now on the rear bumper of Clutton, to see if he can force a similar overtake / mistake that his teammate Berman's done, and he has really scampered off now, already gapped 1.6 seconds within a lap and a half on Clutton.
Yeah, Kajala though got stuck behind a back marker there through Druids, and so Jack Mitchell's closed in a little bit closer now onto the tail of the Mercedes with which we ride, heading through Cascades Corner. Marcus Klutman there trying to find his way past the GT4 race leader, Jamie Caroline, as it makes its way out of Cascades Corner. Avoiding all of the drama though, as he often does, it must be said, is Phil Keane in the number 72 Barwell Motorsport Lamborghini. He has now stretched the margin over Sandy Mitchell slightly to 2.7 seconds, and Patrick Kajala cannot escape these TF Sport Aston Martins. It was the 95 car of Patrick Kibble that held him up at Druids, and now 97 Jamie Caroline also getting in his way, inadvertently, but still holding him up there through the Shell hairpin. Mercedes uses a lot of curb there through Britons, and it always seems to be able to brake really well into the Hislop chicane here as well. Brakes quite late compared to some of the other cars out there on track. Weaves its way through the chicane, and Marcus Klutman has now escaped as a result of the traffic not cooperating maybe quite as well as it could have done. Change there as well. Dennis Lind now ahead of Dean McDonald. That's happened on this lap. Lind was ninth at the start of the lap, but he's ahead now of the number 9 2Cs Motorsport McLaren, so there are quite a few positional changes creeping in here as we get towards the end of this first stint.
Yeah, and interestingly, the pit stop window is open now, so I don't expect any of the Pro-Am cars to come in, but some of the Silvers will have a slightly different strategy, so they'll be able to get their other driver in quicker, and we can see one of the 2C cars coming in and start the pit lane, so it's going to be interesting to see what we can see. The pit lane won't be so busy, the entry's not quite as high as we had in other years, as we see the Optimum car get pretty close to the 2C cars as a box. That's going to swing in. Ollie Wilkinson, another strong stint in that McLaren, my teammate in European GT. We were at Imola last weekend, so he's had a busy couple of weeks. Lewis Proctor getting installed in. Looks like they're putting a set of brand new tyres on the Optimum car. I can't see the 2C's car, but they look like they're staying on the same set, so that Optimum car is going to get a bit of a hit, but I'd expect these Barwell cars to stay out for as long as they can, so the pit window will stay open until the 28th minute to go. They need to be in the pit lane by then, so they're going to be able to get another 5 or 6 laps, and that's just going to be extra time that they get over those silver pairings for Phil Keane before he hands over to Ballum.
Yeah, 3.1 seconds is lead now over Sandy Mitchell as well. It's going up a bit more rapidly than it was. Out goes the 2C's car. Oh, very spectacularly there as it accelerates out of its box. Phil Keane comes through Lodge Corner, but yeah, we don't anticipate he's going to pit anytime soon. The Optimum car there being pushed back as well. A fairly empty pit lane for the two McLarens, and it looked almost as if the Optimum car wouldn't fire back up again then, but it does get going. and they lose just under a lap because they were some way behind the leaders, of course, but they have now gone a lap down to them. There's Kujala coming through, and he's got no pressure behind now because the McLaren's pitting. He stays out one more lap as well, so the Mercedes remains in 5th position now, and hasn't really been able to get back onto the tail of Marcus Clutton so far. Into the pit lane has come, I believe, Dean McDonald. Yep, Dean McDonald is in now, according to my timing screen, in the number 9 car, and also in his number 2, Michael O'Brien, to hand over to James Baldwin. So they're trickling in, and don't forget that some of these cars will have success penalties to serve. The number 2 car in particular will have that extra 10 seconds to serve, as will Dean McDonald's number 9 car. That has an extra 5-second penalty, so they are going to come out a little bit further back than they ordinarily would have done. This, arguably, then, is the 2C's car that could still contend for a good result. The number 10 car that should have been on the podium, really, in race 1. Arguably could have won the race, but for that pit stop penalty. He's made his pit stop now. Jordan Witt is into the car and pushing on to try and gain some track position. This is the easiest time. After the first lap of the race, this is now the easiest time to gain track position. If you can get that undercut, you can gain several seconds and maybe several positions, which you're just you can drive around there for 2 hours and not overtake 3 or 4 cars. The pit stop window is the best time of the race to start making ground up.
Yeah, and that's why you see some cars taking new tyres if they've saved a set from qualifying. They can do that undercut so much easier on that clear air. So it'll be interesting to see. Obviously, there's a bit of a gap for the RJN car leading, but that's because he had such a long penalty. So, yeah, it's painful as a driver when you get such a good result in the first race to then have a hangover, basically, of the next race with a penalty hurting you. So, yeah, it's going to be damage limitations, I think, for that number 2 car in this race.
Yeah, it stops one team or driver dominating throughout the year, though, and at the end of the day, it's still the best teams and the best drivers that end up contesting the championship. So I think it's a system that works well. James Baldwin, though, comes out right in front of Marcus Clutton and Patrick Kujala, who've been out there for nearly half an hour now. They're fully up to speed, and this is another area where maybe James might just take a lap or so longer to get up to speed as someone who is new to real-world racing. Massively successful already in sim racing. He won in his debut in the championship, but that doesn't necessarily mean that he has got all of the tools in his racing driver toolbox just yet. That takes a bit of experience, but he's back out in front of Kujala now. 10-second penalty, by the way, for James Kell in the Toyota, the Speedworks Toyota in GT4, for causing a collision. Not sure what collision he caused, but he's clearly
been with Matt Griffin at the chicane.
Yes, you're right. So that, well, that sounds a bit harsh to me. What do you think? Yeah,
pretty punchy, I think. I thought it was racing incident E. Matt was down the inside. Not Matt's fault at all, but I don't know. It seems I would have liked an investigation after the race. As a driver, it's always nice to put your view across, try and have a bit of a case, and then when you get told you get a penalty, then you can just go home anyway, so it doesn't really matter.
Well, I'm sure Peter Daly, the clerk of the course, has got his reasons, and they, of course, have a lot more data and information that they can use to come to an informed decision than we do. But there you go. So the Toyota, unfortunately, another race of what could have been, really, for them. But they'll bounce back next time out at Donington Park, I'm sure. So nearly halfway through the race then, and definitely no real urgency here for the Pro-Am cars to pit, as you'd expect. I'm surprised in a way at how long they're leaving Sandy Mitchell out there, though, compared to the other pro drivers around. It's same for Kujala. They're the last 2 Silver Cup cars that have not pitted yet, but then they both had really good pace anyway, so I suppose there's no need to bring them in earlier. But do you think that maybe they could have gained if they brought them in a couple of laps before the Pro-Ams?
Both top teams in Barwell and Ram, so they have strategists, and their job is to, funny enough, come up with the strategy. And they would have worked out the delta difference between Kujala, Dehaene and Mitchell and Collard, and they would have worked out that they're quicker over a lap, so it's worth keeping them in as long as possible, like we're seeing with Keane and Berman. The gold versus bronze is a really obvious one, but sometimes the silver wasn't, so maybe this is more contact. What we're looking at, Keane just kind of avoiding a very gentle accident that the Toyota was having, so yeah, Keane would have been looking ahead, would have seen that. I don't think that would have been too worrying for him. So yeah, they could squeeze 2 laps, the leader, but it would be tight on the pit window. So I'd expect him to box at the end of this lap, to be honest, and then we will have a clear indication of where everyone is sitting in the food chain.
GT4 pit window is open now though, so James Kelly's in the Toyota first of all to serve his 10-second stop-go penalty, which must be served separately. You have to serve that in the penalty box and then drive down to the end of the pit lane. We saw one of the Century cars in as well, the 33 car. In, though, perhaps more significantly, comes Patrick Kujala. So this is the mandatory pit stop and driver change. He will hand over to Sam Dahan, who of course raced a Barwell Lamborghini last year in the championship. He was teammate to this man, Phil Keane and Adam Ballon. They were in the sister car, making the move over to Ram Racing this time around. Phil Keane's got the number 10 car of Jordan Witt just in front, who he is slowly catching, but Jordan is still getting himself up to speed in his second stint of the day. Phil Keane, yeah, I think we might just see him coming in now. He and Sandy Mitchell. And Yelba Berman hasn't pitted yet either, of course. We've still got about half of the GT3 field yet to pit, but now there's a bit more traffic appearing in front of Phil. Might have more urgency to get the car in. GT4 cars definitely diving into the pit lane. 95 is in, and that is Patrick Kibble to hand over to Conor O'Brien. The race one winners, though, so they have that extra long pit stop, because not only do they have a success penalty for winning, but they also have the Silver Cup penalty, which does not apply to the GT3 cars, but in the GT4 ranks, the Silver Cup entrants do have an extra 14 seconds to serve. In comes Sandy Mitchell then, Rob Collard about to jump into the car. This is significant. What are they going to do tyre-wise? Looks like they're leaving those tyres on. They should, in theory, have the pace to challenge for the win anyway, regardless of whether they've got fresh tyres on, so that's a bit of a no-brainer.
Yeah, I see the driver change going on. Those big black things they're carrying are their seat inserts, so obviously when you're sharing a car, you're not the same shape of them. Sandy Mitchell weighs about 40 kilos wet, I think, so Rob Collard in his more senior years probably needs a slightly different seat. As we see the Toyota pulling over to one side, looks like a breakdown rather than a crash, so I don't think we need a safety car for that one. Interestingly, Phil Keane squeezed another lap in by my very bad bottom set mathematics. He's only going to be about 8 to 10 seconds clear of losing the pit window, so he should be fine. But if he was to have a spin or to get caught up in some serious traffic, that would be interesting. So when he pits, when we see the time remaining, if it's anything less than 28 minutes, that's outside the pit window. So it's going to be tight, but they obviously think it's a worth roll of the dice to get another lap with Phil Keane behind the wheel. And
just to clarify, as long as they're in the pit lane, that's fine. They don't have to have completed their stop within the window. They have to have passed the pit lane entry line, and that is what defines whether or not it's in time. So here he comes then. He's got 20 seconds to get to that pit entry line. He will have to, as we've been saying, come in this time. So it's going to be touch and go, but with about 6 or 7 seconds left, he should get in. He's not hanging around on the way into the pit lane. 5, 4 seconds, maybe 3 almost. That could not have been timed better, and you're right, that's not even a spin that could have messed him up there. If he'd have got stuck behind traffic going through the 2 chicanes, for example, you can lose 3 seconds there easy.
Yeah, amazed how punchy Barwell are in the first round of the year for that, but this will be mega to see. So this is going to be Collard's out lap versus Phil Keane's in lap, basically. The gap was just around 3 seconds, so it's going to be hard for Collard to jump that 72 car, but I think it's going to be seriously close, and I think after about 4 laps with Ballon and Collard at the wheel, it is going to be very awkward teammate racing going on.
Yes, well, Barwell are quite familiar with awkward teammate racing, aren't they? Because remember that sensational race at Brands Hatch last year where Johnny Cocker and Phil Keane did battle, and at the end of the day, as was to be expected, I suppose, one side of the garage were very happy with the result, the other not so much. On that occasion, they were debating the championship lead going into the final race of the season. This early stage of the year, it's a bit less intense maybe. Right, here comes Adam Ballon out of the pit lane, out of Lodge goes Rob Collard. So you were right, that was only about 3 or so seconds between them beforehand. I reckon it's gone up slightly, but it should now start coming down. So that car there, second place now in the race once again, with Rob Collard at the wheel, chasing down his teammate Adam Ballon, but Ballon is a bronze driver and Rob Collard is a silver. He should be quicker, and he's got 26.5 minutes left to try and catch him. Ian Logie has come through in 3rd place for Ram Racing, and I'm waiting to see who will be in 4th. I think it's going to be Sam Dahan ahead of Jordan Witt. So Dahan 4th, Witt 5th, and the 55 car slipping down the field now as we kind of expected. So that sets the scene then, and I think we are in for a pretty tasty second half of this race.
Yeah, definitely. I think the only thing of interest there is the Barwell guys pushed that car back quite early, and it sat in the pit lane before it's driven off. And it's a definition of the rule, which I do like reading.
Oh,
wow.
Which one's that? Is that 95? It is. That's the 95 Aston Martin off down at Cascades. Conor O'Brien, who's only just taken out that car. In fact, this is his out lap, and he's off in a big way.
First. Yeah, that is interesting to say the least. That's the Bentley, but that's nowhere near on the circuit. That looks like it's going into the second chicane at Knickerbrook to me. But I think we're going to get a safety car for two separate incidents. I can't quite see how they're linked yet as a conspiracy theory, but oh my God.
What is going on? That's Angus Fender now in the number 9 car, so 3 cars.
That's at Shell, so we've got 3 different sectors now under yellow. Unless there's oil down, which I can't see. I mean, the O'Brien car had a lot coming off it, so I'd expect some oil and debris to be at Cascades, but the car looks all right there. To me, the Bentley looked like it had rear damage, the way it was sat down. Yeah, going to need a bit of time to decipher this one. Got the yellow flags out. I can't see the safety car board just yet.
I think there is one just opposite us, but they've not yet told the teams on the timing screen. Pit stop still going on as well, so this could also come into play because the GT4 pit window has not closed yet. So in now comes the surviving TF car, everyone diving for the pit lane in case we get a safety car, which we do. The safety car has now been scrambled. There is every chance, bear in mind most of the GT4 cars lose a lap with a pit stop, because they have that 14 seconds, certainly for the Silver Cup cars. This could really jumble up the GT4 order, so everyone scratching their heads, A, to try and work out what has gone on out there, because suddenly people have started dropping like flies, and B, to try and work out what the long-term implications for the race this might have, but it is certainly going to have an effect on the GT4 category.
Yeah, it's always better to pit under safety car, because obviously your rivals on circuit are circulating slower. The negative is there's a bit of a Russian roulette with where you rejoin. So you can't rejoin the circuit if the safety car has left the last corner. So the pit exit light will go red, and that's just to stop cars rejoining the safety car train in the middle of it. So you can get lucky and find a lot of time. Ideally, you would have waited a lap longer for the safety car to have slowed everyone down to a lower speed, but maybe they would have been tight on that pit stop window. So not front-end damage, but the car's gone off around that little kink down the avenue. So let's get the replay lined up and let's try and decipher what's happened. So car on his inside.
And that's the Bentley.
And that is the Bentley. So the Bentley's gone down the inside, there's been contact. So the Bentley then, wow, that McLaren's done well. So then I think the McLaren's been hit by a wheel. Looked like it was a wheel bouncing along. So the conspiracy is the Bentley and the Aston have come together. The Bentley's then taken the old Foster's circuit and ended up at Knickerbrook 8 corners later. The Aston's laid to rest there. And I think the McLaren has got some legacy damage from the Aston Martin wheel hitting it. To me, it looked like there was a wheel bouncing around, and although it only looks like a relatively small object, the wheel weighs 15 kilos with a tyre. So that doing 100 miles an hour suddenly has a lot of energy and does a lot of damage. So I'd expect to see some damage on the left-hand side of the GT3 McLaren from 2Cs. And I'd say the Bentley's just got left-hand side damage from the contact with O'Brien. Angle was a bit wide for me to say whose fault it was. It looked like it was properly side to side. It looked like Nick Jones was already at the apex, and it looked like Conor was also there. Sometimes you can have an accident without it being someone's fault. It can generally be a miscommunication, it can be a misunderstanding, but the ramifications of that were pretty spectacular. And yeah, you can see the rear left of that McLaren has taken a wallop, and I think that was from the stray wheel of the Aston Martin. There's definitely no tyre on that left-hand rim. So just try and...
Could he run over debris, maybe? Could it be a simple
I
scratch?
mean, there's the Intelligent Money, good plug for them board. But you see that wheel coming off the Aston Martin in the middle of the grass now. And I think that just smacks the back of the car. And that's probably equivalent to 250, 300 kilos of force. And we build them strong at McLaren, but funnily enough, I don't remember doing the development. I'm getting smashed by a GT4
well, this should be an
tyre.
interesting view.
So this will be Nick Jones coming stage left, and this will confuse the hell out of anyone on track. And hopefully, obviously there was no damage, and I think he's done a really good job there to get it slow and stopped up. And then because the damage is so severe, he's just parked the car up, and it might not even turn more than that if he's got steering damage, and that's where he has to leave the car for his Sunday afternoon.
So they were all related then, though you would never have thought those three cars being deposited in those three completely different parts of the circuit were involved in the same accident, but that's the unpredictability of motor racing, isn't it? Sometimes you really do have to expect the unexpected. What has happened here then is it's bunched up the whole field, obviously, and poor old Adam Ballon, well, he was hoping that he'd have that maybe 3 or 4 second cushion that Phil Keane had built up over the sister 78 car in the first stint to fall back on. That's now gone, and when we do get the race restarted, which we will do, I'm sure, before the time runs out, we've still got 20 and a half minutes left on the clock. Rob Collard is going to be on his toes to try and find a way through. Let's run you through the order then. So Ballon leads from Rob Collard in second, the two Barwell cars, the AM driver Ballon, the silver driver Rob Collard, and another AM driver in third. That's Ian Logie in the number 6 Ram Racing Mercedes, ahead of two Silver Cup drivers, Sam Tahan in the 69 Mercedes, and the number 10 of Jordan Witt. Now, Jordan will really want to get a good result out of this race after the penalties that they had in the previous one whilst they were leading it. In 6th place, Michael Igo. They've crept through out of nowhere to be in contention. Michael is an AM driver, then another two Silver drivers with Lewis Proctor, number 96, and two James Baldwin in 8th position. Michael Seal is 9th, but possibly I think he's just been waved back through onto the lead lap, and then that's it for GT3s. It's been quite a race of attrition for the GT3 category. Mia Fluid, as we predicted, is back in the lead in GT4 now for Valve Motorsport in the McLaren, and she is an AM driver, and right behind her she will have not 1, not 2, not 3, not 4, but 5 Silver Cup drivers, with Daniel Vaughan for TF Sport 97 second, 58 HHC Motorsport Patrick Matisse third, 43, which is the Century Motorsport BMW of Ben Hurst, will be in 4th place, and Chippy Westermail in the 57 HHC McLaren will be in 5th in GT4, with David Whitmore in 7th. So what this definitely does is helps those that did well in the previous race, because those drivers and the teams that had the success penalties for finishing on the podium, and I'm looking at people, for example, like Lewis Proctor, James Baldwin in GT3, the 97 Aston Martin of Daniel Vaughan in GT4 that was 3rd in the first race, they all now will have they'll have regained all of the time that they lost in the pit lane. So this definitely changes the complexion of their race, gives us a chance to look back about 40 minutes to the start of the race, when it was a Lamborghini 1-2 there as well. The 72 car of Phil Keane led the way, but Marcus Clutton was on a mission, barging his way past the two Ram Racing Mercedes to go from 5th on the grid to 3rd. The second of those moves in particular was very impressive, round the outside of Patrick Kajala through Cascades, and he made it a Lamborghini 1-2-3 in the early stages. Up at Island Bend, though, there were problems for Michael O'Brien, ran wide onto the grass, bounced his way back onto the road, and I think he maybe had contact almost with the HHC car, only just missed it, or if it was contact, it was very light. That car's back in contention now. It's running in 8th place, but with a silver driver on board, could well make some ground up here in the final 15 minutes or so. So, as I was starting to say there, Joe, then the people this benefits are those that had extra time to serve in the pit lane, be they podium finishers from race 1 or in GT4, Silver Cup entries that had those mammoth 14-second time penalties to serve. That all now gets eradicated. And okay, they've lost some track position, but they're right back in contention now, and arguably quicker than the cars in front of them.
Yeah, definitely. So all the gaps are closed up. The only thing where you had a bigger time gap is there was more likely to have a GT4 in the way. So the top 3 are all actually together, but then from Igo to Proctor, there's actually 3 GT4s there. There's 1 between Dehan and Witt. There's 3 in between Witt and Igo. So there's sort of that explosive nature of the GT4 cars there. I'd say probably the biggest loser is Mia Fluid, because she had a really healthy lead in GT4, and that's all been eradicated. So she's going to have a very interesting last part of the race, as you alluded to, with all the silvers behind her. We see the truck now at the McLaren. I think that's probably going to be the slowest one to recover. So once that's gone, I think we've got a chance. I think hopefully we'll get 10 to 12 minutes of green flag racing at the end. Who do I think is going to be moving and shaking? I think Collard's going to be quick on Ballon, and then I think Dehan's going to be quick on Logie. But then I also see Proctor and Baldwin towards the back of that group, bunching all of them up. So Yeah, I think we've pretty much got 8 cars in nearly the wrong order, so it's going to be interesting to see. Round here for me, if I was in the car right now, I'd be striking hot. I'd be super aggressive on the restart, looking to even be alongside over the start-finish line. The rule is you can't be in front, but you can be alongside. So if you could be alongside on the inside, you've basically got the pass done already. So maybe slightly dirty, but you play to the rules, and that's probably the easiest overtake you'll get at Oulton Park is on the safety car restart. But all 8 top GT3 drivers are going to be wise to that. So yeah, it's going to be interesting, and I think the first lap is going to be the one where you can get your move done on the opponent, basically while the tyres aren't at operating temperature, and you might be able to squeeze a little bit more performance out of it.
So we've got these 2 Barwell Lamborghinis then running first and second, and what we both agree on is that Rob Collard should be quicker than Adam Ballon, arguably should be able to get through and win the race. Is there any point at which the team even consider stepping in here and saying, look Adam, Rob's quicker than you, don't hold him up, because then you could both end up losing ground because there are more quick drivers coming behind?
Yeah, I think it's not as clear cut as that yet, because we haven't had evidence. We think he should be faster, but we don't know. So the team wouldn't be able to make that call until they see it being detrimental to both cars, and I don't think we'll see enough time for that. And I don't think they would request that of Ballon, who would be going after the championship. Likewise, I don't think Ballon would expect it back the other way if it was Keane Mitchell, blah blah blah. I don't think that would happen. So I think it'll be clean. They'll be reminded of their duties, but the beautiful thing of customer racing is that they are the customers. It's their toys. They can smash them into each other if they want. The teams are there to provide a service, and the service is to make the cars turn up at the weekend. There's no political weight they can do about that, basically. I think, Kelvin, you're with Connor's teammate down there, who obviously had that rather large moment.
Hi guys, yes Patrick, your teammate Connor there was out. Looks like he was the unfortunate passenger in that incident there.
Yeah, I saw the replay. It looked like he had nowhere to go really. He left space for the other car, the other GT3, and the other driver went for the gap, and I think he must have lost control, and I don't know how it happened, but yeah, just sent into the barrier, and really nothing you could do about it. It's so unlucky, because we were probably on target for another podium, maybe with P2 or something. So yeah, we'll have to take that on the chin, look for the positives in that, and go to Donington and try and get the best out of the situation.
It's so frustrating though. I've been up to the situation before. As a GT4 driver, you do everything you can to get out of the way, and then when you're still clipped, it's so frustrating, because like you say, you're doing so well there, and to have essentially to have made all the effort to get out of the way and then still be clipped, it's a real shame to the end of what has been a fantastic weekend for you guys.
Yeah, I mean that's GT racing. I mean there's always going to be AMs, GT3 AMs going through. Looking for a gap to get past the GT4s, and I mean that's the unlucky side of the racing that we've just found ourselves on the side of. So there's not much we can do now, so we've got to get on with it now.
Yeah, well, like I say, I look forward to the next round now, but well done this weekend anyway.
Thank you.
And bad luck. Back to you guys.
Yeah, Kelvin, it'd be interesting if you could go down to Malvern in the Team Park and Bentley garage to get their view on it. I'm not saying Kibble was wrong, but definitely seemed like he was quite confident with it, maybe more confident of which way his mask went up. But yeah, I think it was more of a race incident there. But yeah, hopefully we're going to get back to green racing soon.
There are 2 sides to every story, aren't there, at the end of the day, especially when it's multi-class like that, and sometimes, as you were saying, it's just a miscommunication. It's just two drivers, 2 cars wanting the same bit of track, and it doesn't have to be anyone's fault, but it's always handy to hear both sides of the story. So I'm sure Kelvin is foxtrotting his way down the pit lane to the Team Park, sorry I couldn't resist, to the Team Park Racing garage, where he will have a chat with Scott Malvern, if he's in the mood for talk, which he may not be, because it's been a bit of a rubbish weekend for Team Park, haven't it? But a track where they've had lots of success in the past, and that Bentley always has gone well here. They've just not really looked at home this weekend, and that both drivers are getting used to the car. They've had limited testing, and that's something actually that I think maybe doesn't get talked about quite as much as it should do. But the fact that we've had, for obvious reasons, less track time this year, it's not just that we've not had racing, but throughout lockdown, people haven't been able to go testing, and especially if you've just bought a brand new GT3 car, you want to go and drive it and get used to it. And I'm sure there are quite a few drivers out there, not just in this championship, but across the board, who are ruining the fact that they haven't had that extensive pre-season test programme.
Yeah, I can speak from first-hand experience, being out of the car for 10 weeks for the first time in probably 20 years since I was 10 years old was interesting. My first test was back at Donington, and it was quite nice to just get out there, have no idea what was going on for the first few laps, and see the lap time was still within a few tenths. And yes, we have simulators and stuff, but the simulators are an odd one. I enjoy the simulator, but I don't find it any beneficial nature for real world. You always get a bit confused of what's real life and what's fake, and I think that's what's so impressive with Baldwin, is that he's come from that fake world into the real world, and he's performing really well. We see a little bit delay on the recovery of that McLaren. Looks like probably because it's rear suspension, it won't roll, so they're going to have to do what we call a full lift. So they will put the straps around the four corners on the wheel and lift the car up, but it's not a simple strategy, unfortunately, and we are losing time here. This will be interesting to see how long we get left. Adam Ballon, every lap he goes round Shell Oils and sees that recovery truck there, will be grinning like a Cheshire cat. Although it's an expensive pursuit, it's the easiest way for him to win. So I think I've thrown Kelvin into the fire pit, and he has found Scott Mulvin. Good luck, Kev.
So I'll choose my words very carefully. I'll play devil's advocate. Scott, I was just saying that's been considered, Joe was saying maybe a racing incident. I've been chatting to the guys there, the Aston Martin. I've been in that situation before, as you know yourself, last year in the GT4s, you make your best to get out of the way. The GT3 comes through at such an increased pace. In your opinion, was that just down to a racing incident and miscommunication, or could Nick have done a little bit more?
I think, having been in both situations now, in both sides of the fence, when you're in a GT4, you're trying to do your best to make sure you give them enough space. I couldn't appreciate that until now. How fast you do come across GT4s, and especially here, it's it gets wider, it gets narrower in different places. So it's a tough call. I know how hard it is to just keep looking in your mirror all the time. So I don't want to put the blame on the GT4, but it's tricky. It's tough to give enough space. I think Nick probably did as much as he could. I don't think he would have gone through the gap unless he felt comfortable doing it. So he obviously felt that there was enough space there. And obviously maybe the GT4 was a little bit unsighted, or wasn't sure how much space he was giving him.
Yeah, I think regardless of that, I thought Nick did a splendid job further down there to actually get out of the way, and what could have been quite another accident further on the track. So
yeah, no, super fast down, through cascades like that. It's a really fast part of the track, especially in GT3. And hats off. That's a big off. To get the car under control and get it out of the way like that is, hats off to Nick.
Well, unfortunate for you guys, but I'm sure you'll be back next round stronger for it. Thanks, guys.
Thank you, Calvin. Well, more breaking news. Pit stop time infringement for car number 6. That is Ian Loggy in 3rd position. He's got to serve a 2-second stop-go penalty. So that takes him out of the podium fight. It promotes his teammate Sam Zahan into a podium position, but it takes away another one of those AM drivers that could have possibly provided a buffer between Adam Ballon and the rest of the Silver Cup entrants. But having said that, it looks as though we're not going racing anytime soon, because that 2C's Motorsport car is still parked at the side of the road at Shell. We're going to have at least one more lap. The trouble is, when you have 3 cars off, there are only so many recovery vehicles here at OULTON Park, and one of them you can see down there at Hislops is recovering the Team Park of Bentley. You've got one, I guess, hoiking what's left of the TF Sport Aston Martin out of the gravel trap at Cascade. So this is taking a while, and might mean that the number 6 car takes the penalty behind the safety car, which could be interesting. So either way, Ian Loggy being handed that penalty, and that will sadly take the first of those Mercedes out of the fight for the race win. So Ballon from Collard from Dahan will become the top 3 as and when we get racing again. But we're now getting to that stage really where even if we do go racing, it's only going to be 2 laps, maybe 3 that we get before the checkered flag comes out. So yeah, Adam Ballon will be feeling that actually he's got every chance of keeping Rob Collard behind for 2 or 3 laps maybe.
Yeah, so we see one of the cars recovered. I think the unfortunate thing is that the recovery truck that was with the McLaren maybe wasn't the right spec one and has left the scene. So we are Yeah, we've got no recovery truck on site now, and only 6 minutes remaining. Matt Marshall's having a nice day. You're doing a good job as always, keeping us safer and clearing up the track as quickly as possible. But yeah, this is going to be an interesting one. I think it's going to be hard to get back to green now, to be honest, with the time remaining. So the 6 car is going to get the stop and go, but lose every single place behind it, obviously. So that's been really hurt now in hindsight by the safety car. So it looks like it will be a Ballon Collard Dahan podium with not much else moving around, I don't think.
Well, let's see. We thought in race 1 that we wouldn't go racing again when we had a late safety car. Hopefully that will be a similar situation again, where we get maybe a lap or so at the end, and if we do, should be a really, really interesting fight to the flag. Down the left-hand side of your screen, you can see what we've been talking about, this mix of Pro-Am and Silver entries in the GT3 category this year, a category that's very much been dominated by Pro-Am driver lineups in recent years. The gold numbers with white backgrounds are Pro-Am GT3s, and the white background with the black numbers are the silver combos. Rob Collard is the leading Silver Cup car, so he's on for a class win, if nothing else. They've left the Bentley down the escape road at the chicane. That's fair enough. We see cars left there quite often, just to save having to drag them right the way back around the track, and that means they can send that truck now down the Lakeside Straight towards Shell again. But yeah, best case scenario, we're looking at one more lap behind the pace car. Ian Loggie's not had much luck at Alton Park in recent years, has he? He had that big crash in the Bentley at the top of Hilltop a few years ago, and then he was wiped out by a Bentley at his last year in the second lap of the season. He was assaulted by Ryan Ratcliffe in a Bentley. That was the team Parker car, ironically, and Ian Loggie, I think, will be quite glad to get out of Alton Park. He had, where did they end up in race 1? They were 6th in race 1, Ian Loggie and Yelmer Berman. But race 2 not really going their way. There's the 55 car that starred in the opening stint of the race, but Michael Seal is down in 9th place now. He's the last of the GT3 cars still running. The Fluid leading in GT4 is actually ahead of them in the queue, but the GT4 cars all appear... Yes, they all appear to still be on the same lap, which is good news. They're all 2 laps down from the overall race leader, but the top 2, 4, 6 cars in GT4 are all at least on the same lap as each other. And there you can see them going through, actually, all pretty close to each other in the queue. 3.5 minutes to go. So if we go green this time, we should have 1 lap of racing, maybe 2. But if we don't, I fear that could be the end of the race. And good news for Barwell, though, in more than one way, really. It means that they're going to bank a 1-2, and they don't have to deal with that potentially awkward situation of their drivers racing each other for the race win. So Sam Dahan then heads out of Cascades, and as we said earlier on, the 69 car, when its teammate serves the stop-go, will inherit a podium position, and they finished 5th in race 1, so they're going to come out of all of this with one of the best averages. I think 78 and 69 are going to come out. Well, 78 was 4th in race 1 and they're 2nd now, and 69 were 5th in race 1 and they're going to inherit 3rd. So I know it's early days, Joe, but you know, for all of this talk about McLaren's dominating that first qualifying session, it's actually Ram Racing and Barwell that have had the most consistent days. Yep, and that's what wins championships time and time again. And I think, to be honest, the safety cars probably hurt the McLaren contingency the most in GT3, just because it's curtailed all that silver running against the bronze drivers. So it stopped all the inroads there, and it doesn't look like we're going to get back to green. So yeah, I thought Scott Malvin was very diplomatic and correct in what he said, but now, I'm angry now that we've lost this end of the race because of that incident. I think yeah, we've been robbed of a really, really good ending here, and yeah, just unfortunate, I guess, that it was 3 cars that all needed recovering and just don't quite have the resource here at Alton Park to do it. Well, we'll know in a few seconds whether or not this is going to end on the safety car, because the lights tend to go out somewhere around Druid, so they're heading towards that part of the circuit now. They're still flashing. Adam Ballon weaving around, keeping warmth in the tyres just in case, which you've got to do. You've always got to be prepared, and they caught us on the hop a bit with the restart in race 1, so if they can give us a finish, then they will. But are those lights on or off as they head underneath the bridge? They're still on, so I think, sadly, that the race is likely to end behind the safety car, and that is a great shame, not only for us and everyone watching from home, but the big crowd that's assembled here at Oulton Park. They would have loved to have seen the race end but under green, but you know, safety has to come first. You clearly can't leave that McLaren perched on the edge of the road up at Shell. It has to be moved, and you know, there are championships out there, particularly in America, that would add time on at the end of the race. In fact, the National Formula 4 Championship in the UK will do that. They'll add some time on at the end of the race if they get a safety car period. That is not an option that we have, though, for British GT, unfortunately. And so it looks as though, for the first time in quite a while, the race is going to finish behind the safety car. I suppose technically the last time it happened was here 2 years ago. Didn't go the full distance behind the safety car, but we did have about 6 or 7 laps behind the safety car in atrociously wet conditions, and the race was called early. So that's not a good reputation for Oulton Park to have, maybe, but it's just an unfortunate coincidence, I guess.
Yeah, unfortunately, you can see the marshals out the window getting their flags ready for the day. So yeah, that's that one. I think luckily, obviously, all the drivers were safe after the incident. There was no injuries or anything like that, so they all fight to go another day, basically. But yeah, I think it's been an interesting day. I think it's shown a few surprises. I think for me, I was surprised quite how quick Collard was, so I think he's probably upped his championship credentials. I think Lewis Proctor's won himself a lot of fans in putting it on pole and then leading that whole first stint. So I think those two are probably the big movers and shakers on that one. And then it's a lovely chance to have a look at the McLaren GT leading it all. So McLaren will win of some form on the road. So yeah, there we have a lovely Sunday afternoon drive around the rolling hills of Cheshire.
I think that McLaren safety car's led more laps than anyone else this weekend, not just in the GT races, but we've had a bit of a rash of safety cars here at Oulton Park. It's back to what we said earlier on. If you go off here, you're going to hit something more than likely. And you hit something, you can't get the car out of the way, and it needs a safety car to do so. But yeah, that's that McLaren, it does look rather nice, I have to say. Nice colour red as well. So we don't have a red McLaren with us right now in the championship because the Motorsport car not entered into this round in GT3, but it is going to be a victory, it would seem, for Balfe Motorsport in GT4. The car just in front of us is Mia Fluid, who was in the lead by a healthy margin anyway after the pit stops, and a strong stint for Ewan Hankey, who brought the car in second place, but because of pit stop penalties for others around them, they've been able to come out on top. So it is a safety car finish to our second round of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship, but it is still a superb performance for Barwell Motorsport as Phil Keenan and Adam Ballon win round number 2 of the championship. Rob Collard and Sandy Mitchell come home in second position. Sam Dahad and Patrick Kujala will inherit third because Ian Loggy, I think they've applied a time penalty rather than giving him the stop-go in the end, so he drops right down the order. Jordan Witt brings the 2Cs Motorsport, the surviving 2Cs Motorsport car, home in fourth. The car that he shares with Jack Mitchell and Michael Igo and Dennis Lind, rounding out the top 5. Sixth place for Lewis Proctor in the 96 Optimum Motorsport Aston Martin that he shares with Ollie Wilkinson, and then James Baldwin, the Race 1 winner with Michael O'Brien. They finish in 7th place. In GT4, it is going to be Mia Fluid and Ewan Hankey take the win. Dan Vaughan and Jamie Caroline get themselves 2nd place in GT4 for TF Sport, and 3rd for Patrick Mathieson and the number 58 of Jordan Collard that they share. So from Oulton Park, we now move on to Donington Park next time out. 2 races again now. It's a new format at Donington. One 1 hour race like these ones in the morning, and then a 2 hour race later on, and that is a completely different circuit. It's still a parkland circuit, as you alluded to earlier on, but much faster, much more flowing, wider. It's going to produce not only a different style of racing, but possibly different cars are going to have the advantage when we get there.
Yeah, definitely. It's a lot faster, a lot more flowing, with a lot more overtaking spots, especially on the GP loop. And yeah, I'm fortunate enough I'll be racing there myself. So everyone's a winner. You won't have to listen to me. And I'll be out on track having some fun and hopefully bringing some silverware with the Balf boys in the McLaren GT3.
Absolutely. As much as we enjoy having you up here in the commentary box, we all know that your natural habitat is the racetrack, and it will be great to have you back out there on track. But don't worry, Joe will be back again in the commentary box later on in the year, towards the pointy end of the season as well, actually, when the championships will be decided. Well, let's confirm then, shall we, the result of round number 2 of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. Adam Ballon and Phil Keane lead a Barwell Motorsport 1-2. And they also win the Pro-Am category as well, of course. Rob Collard and Sandy Mitchell in second win the Silver Cup, with Patrick Kujala and Sam Dahan third place. Jack Mitchell and Jordan Witt are fourth. Michael Igo and Dennis Lynn for WPI Motorsport in fifth position, ahead of Ollie Wilkinson and Lewis Proctor in the Optimum Aston Martin. And it's James Baldwin and Michael O'Brien in seventh. Marcus Clutton and John Seal end up eighth. That's not a bad result for them. Whilst Yelmer Berman and Ian Loggy are demoted by 30 seconds by the looks of it, in lieu of the stop-go penalty. Then in GT4, Mia Flewitt and Ewan Hankey take the victory. Again, a Pro-Am car comes out on top this time, ahead of Dan Vaughan and Jamie Caroline, who get themselves a pair of podiums. And I reckon the championship lead in GT4, they also win the Silver Cup. Patrick Mathiasen and Jordan Collard are third, ahead of Ben Hurst and Andrew Gordon-Colbrook fourth for Century. Chippy Wessamale and Gus Bowers for HHC round out the top five, ahead of David Whitmore and Luke Sedgwickowski in the second of the Century BMWs in 15th. And I think the only other finisher in the end, albeit a lap behind the other GT4 cars, was the 61 Academy Motorsport car, Ford Mustang of Jordan Albert and Matt Cowley. And there you can see him, and then everybody else, unfortunately, failed to make the end. Scott Malvern and Nick Jones, Angus Fender and Dean McDonald, and Patrick Kibble and Conor O'Brien, all involved in that spectacular accident down at Cascades. All drivers are okay though. This driver more okay than most. Adam Ballon gets out of his car, and a rather subdued celebration. It's not the way you want to win a race, is it? As much as we were saying that, you know, there was every chance he wouldn't have won had it got green to the flag, he would still have rather had the chance to find out under green flag conditions. But at the same time, a win's a win, and it's worth the same amount of points.
Yeah, it isn't. At the end of the year, the record books won't show you how the race was won, but it is an odd feeling. It's hard to not kind of sound like an arrogant sort of character when you're not super happy with it, but you want to win it fair and hard, and sometimes when it feels gifted, it's not quite the same elation you get after the race, to say the least.
Mia Flewitt, our first female winner since Flick Haig a couple of years ago, and Flick of course went on to win the championship with Johnny Adam that year. That was in GT3, see whether or not Flick and Ewan Hankey can do the job in GT4. Conversations there between Rob Collard and Adam Ballon. Rob saying, "Oh, I would have had you, you know, if that safety car hadn't stayed out." Adam saying, yeah, whatever you say. But Barwell with that 1-2 at a track they've always gone well at. The mid-engine cars do seem to like these more tight and technical circuits, Alton Park and Snetterton, for example, whereas maybe when we go to places like Silverstone and Donington, they sometimes seem to struggle. Well, let's remind ourselves, shall we, of all of the action from the second race of the weekend from Alton Park. It's been a really entertaining day of racing. Great to get the season off to a start. In the end, it's taken us longer than we'd have liked, but we have been away and racing here at Alton. And in race number 2, Marcus Clutton, the man on the move in the early stages, in the second of the green Lamborghinis, diving up the inside of the number 6 Yelmer Berman driven Mercedes, and then went round the outside of Patrick Kujala in the second of the Ram Racing Mercedes to gain 2 spots and move into third on the opening lap. There was trouble though for Michael O'Brien, who ran wide through Island Bend on the opening lap, and as he bounced back onto the track, almost wiped out the HHC McLaren in GT4. Thankfully, no major damage done, and the number 2 car was able to continue in the race. After that, things started to settle down a bit in that first stint of the race. It was very, very close, though, in the queue of cars chasing after Marcus Clutton. Clutton was in third place after that demon start, but was struggling to keep the others at bay. He had both of the Ram Racing Mercedes behind him. Yelmer Berman, having got past Patrick Kujala, was then setting off after the Lamborghini. Contacts down at Hislop's between the number 51 Ferrari of Matt Griffin and the 23 Toyota in GT4, which had a bit of a troubled race and eventually failed to finish. It was given a penalty for that bit of contact. Then it ran wide through Knickerbrook a few laps later, and later on in the race pulled off with some sort of issue, possibly a legacy of the contact that they'd had earlier on. But the Toyota, after a really strong debut in the championship in race 1, sadly not able to leave OULTON Park with the results it deserved. In the pit stop window, people were diving for the pit lane whilst other people were trying to dive for gaps that just weren't there. Contact made between the Team Parker Racing Bentley and the race 1 winning TF Sport Aston Martin down at Cascades, which also took out the 2Cs Motorsport McLaren as a completely innocent victim. As the Bentley managed to crawl out of the way, the McLaren spun up at Shell, and with 3 different cars stuck at various points around the track, the safety car had to be called, and unfortunately it was not possible to get all of those cars out of the way before the end of the race. So the race finishes behind the pace car. It was a Barwell 1-2. The third place Mercedes of Ian Loggy given a time penalty in lieu of a stop-go for an infringement midway through the race, and that promoted his teammate Sam Dahan into a podium place. So race number 2 is in the books then. We've got the championship off to a start now, and Barwell Motorsport I think will be pretty happy on balance with the way that their day has gone, especially Adam Ballon, who's a winner once again in the championship, and he is down in Parc Ferme celebrating with Kelvin.
Well, I'm here with Phil and Adam. Phil, firstly, great stint from you. How good does it feel to be leaving OULTON Park with a win? Obviously, a championship is not won in the first round, but these lump of points here is going to be good for the rest of the year.
Yeah, well, the plan was actually not to score too many points here and wait till the end of the year, because normally when we do well at OULTON, we don't do too well at the end of the year. So, but you know, we need to take the points when we can. Adam, we've had a challenging weekend, and Adam's driven well all weekend. It's just a shame he couldn't race at the end.
Adam, as I said before, I know firsthand what a great driver you are. Now, on paper, you had Rob Collard behind you, who was about to be breathing down your neck. Yeah. And the guys in the commentary box were saying, obviously, as a silver driver, you're obviously a bronze driver. On paper, he should be in a position to attack and overtake you. But I was fighting your corner, and I was quietly confident that even with that assault from Rob, that you could hold him off and, you know, show your worth there, albeit as a bronze driver, and bring it home. You didn't need to do that, but I'm sure, would you have been confident should that have played out like that?
Yeah, I would have given it a damn good shot. And you know what, around here it's tough to overtake, and if I can get into my groove, then I think I would have been able to hold him off. But we'll never know. It's a shame.
Well done anyway, guys. Well deserved, and a great end to OULTON Park. Back to you guys.
Thanks, Kelvin. Yeah, that's kind of what you thought Adam Ballon would say, isn't it? He wasn't going to give that up without a fight, and Rob Collard isn't known for being bashful about making an aggressive move either, so it's possibly for the best all round that we didn't get to see that battle take place. But Adam Ballon and Phil Keed, they've got a win, they've got some good points. They obviously were targeting the championship this year, and that's been near enough the perfect start to the season for them.
Yeah, definitely. I think race 1 they were a little bit further down than they thought. But I think that just shows you the strength of the field, especially with the influx of silver drivers. That AM qualifying is going to be a lot spicier than it has been historically, I think. So, yeah, I think those AMs are going to have to dig even deeper, especially in qualifying, to try and raise their game and be higher on the grid, basically. Yeah,
it puts the pressure more on both of the drivers in a Pro-Am combo, because they both have to perform to a very high level. The slightest of mistakes from either of them at any point over the weekend could really, really hurt them. Well, in GT3 it was a Lamborghini 1-2. In GT4 though, it was a McLaren on top, and it was the Balf Motorsport car of Ewan Hankey and Mia Fluitt. They're down with Kelvin.
Ewan, that was action-packed last 20-30% of that race. How did it feel?
Yeah, I mean, obviously for myself, my start wasn't brilliant. The 97 had a little bit better, and then I just had to hold on to him as much as I could. I knew we would have had a bit of a pit stop advantage with the time penalty that they had, so I was confident that Mia would have every chance of holding on. And when the safety car came out, I was then worried for her, thinking that all the advantage that we'd built up might have been negated, but thankfully you know, it ended the way it did, and we'll take our first Pro-Am win together, which is awesome. And yeah, I couldn't be happier.
I would say, Mia, not just a Pro win, but an overall win in GT4.
Amazing.
Absolutely amazing. Well done to you. You were saying before that, you know, you don't feel like you could quite celebrate, but listen, a win is a win, and you should absolutely take that. Really, really well done.
Thank you. Yeah, no, we'll absolutely take it. It's, yeah, a very strange way to end the race, obviously, and we all want to go racing, but I could feel I had quite a lot of cars behind me, so I knew if it did go green, it was going to be quite a, you know, race to the end. So I was excited as well, and you know, it's a shame obviously what happened to all those cars because there was quite a lot of drama. But yeah, we'll take it.
Yeah, no, a race win is a race win, like you say. So well done, guys.
Thank you very much.
Congratulations.
Thank you so much.
Thanks, Kelvin. So they are your GT4 winners and championship contenders. Do you think those two? It's always been tough historically for the Pro-Am drivers, particularly in GT4, to go up against the Silver Cup entries, but there aren't as many silver entries in GT4 this year.
Yeah, definitely. I think Ewan is super fast, so there's no questions about him. Mia's proved herself massively over the last few years in the pure McLaren series, so she's a top am. So for sure, with the penalties, the silvers, get it. I think they've got a really good chance of going for the overall championship.
Well, I'm sure they'll be glad to hear that. Here is the calendar then for the season. Obviously, there have been some amendments and changes. We don't go to Spa this year, but SRO have done a brilliant job, actually, of ensuring that we don't lose even a minute of track time. We will still have exactly as much racing time this year as was originally planned, but with some slight changes to the schedule and the format. So from Alton Park, we go to Donington Park in 2 weeks' time. We've got 3 events in the course of 5 weeks in August. It's a brilliant start to the year. From Donington, we head to Brands Hatch at the end of August, and then we have a bit of a break. We've got a couple of weeks off before we're back to Donington Park again for a second visit, and that one will be the 3-hour race, one of 2 3-hour races this year. Then we're back to Snetterton, where we're back to the 2 one-hour race format that we've had here today. That's a lot later in the season than it normally would be, though, 3rd and 4th of October. And then Silverstone at the end of the season. We finish with arguably our biggest race, the Silverstone 500, but later in the year, and it will be the championship decider. And Joe, I've been to Silverstone in November. It's rarely hot and sunny. It's usually quite damp and grey, and when you throw in the fact that that's a 3-hour championship decider, I'm really kind of looking forward to that.
It's going to be grim, but in the best possible sense, because it will lead to some amazing racing. Being in Old Airfield, it can be so cold there. So it's actually going to be quite interesting for the teams to see, setup-wise, how they're going to keep enough heat in the tyres. Normally we're talking about getting rid of the heat and the tyre getting too hot. Mid-November, Silverstone, it is going to be Baltic, is my prediction there.
I think so, and I would also fairly confidently predict that the championship's going to go down to the wire. It always does, but I think this year more than ever it really is too close to call. So the podium has a bit of a new look this year as well, a socially distanced podium up there, rather than getting all of the teams on the podium at the same time, which quite obviously isn't possible anymore. It's a sort of one-by-one relay, and it means everyone gets their own moment in the spotlight, actually. So Phil Keane and Adam Ballon collect their trophies and pose for the pictures. They will leave the scene, and then we'll get our presumably second place finishers. No, that's not Rob. That's oh yes, so no. Okay, so we're going to GT4 now. So the
HHC car?
HHC, that's right. See, as soon as they get out of their cars, I'm hopeless with faces, especially with these new face masks. Yes, the HHC cars then in GT4, which again had a pretty decent day. They were 3rd place in that one with the 58 car, but they were on the podium in both races. And it takes some getting used to this, doesn't it, with the new way of doing things. But I don't know.
TF Aston.
Yes, TF Aston. Yes, you see, it would be helpful if their overalls were fluorescent yellow like the cars. But that was again a good day for TF Sport. They may have lost one car in that fairly significant accident at the end of race 2, but they've scored some good points across the board, and Jamie Caroline doing well on his debut. Ewan Hankey and Mia Fluent, I know these two because we've just seen them with Kelvin down in Parc Ferme, and they hold their 2 lots of trophies aloft, because not only do they win GT4 overall, but they also, of course, win in the Pro-Am element of the race as well. And great to see those two at the top. They've had a bit of a trying weekend at times, but really came good in that second qualifying session when Ewan Hankey put the car on pole, and as it transpired, that was exactly the right time to be at the front of the field. Luke Sejkowski now and David Whitmore, who are also Pro-Am, they're the Am winners by virtue of the fact they're the only all-Am entrant here, but they are in a class of their own and actually did pretty well. They didn't disgrace themselves at all in the 2 races today. 15th place overall for them. So that is all we've got time for here from Alton Park. That's all of the racing. It's been a busy day, lots of action crammed into a relatively short space of time, which it goes really for the rest of the 2020 season. We will be back in just 2 weeks from Donington Park with the 2-race format that we'll have there. A 1-hour race in the morning, a 2-hour race in the afternoon. That is going to be another great day of action. We'll see the championship continue to twist and turn as the season goes on. My thanks to Joe Osborne for joining me up here in the comms box. Best of luck from all of us for Donington Park in a couple of weeks' time. I'm sure you can't wait to get out there and enjoy the racing again. And of course, a huge thanks as well to our presenter, Kelvin Fletcher, who I think has done a pretty good job all round today. And it's great to have him on board in the team, we hope, for the rest of the year. Thank you everyone for joining us here with the live coverage of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship. It's great to have you all back. We couldn't do it though without the hard work from everyone behind the scenes. SRO have done a magnificent job of allowing us to go back racing again. Motorsport Vision as well, who own the Alton Park circuit, have been working hard behind the scenes to ensure that they can have spectators here this weekend. And of course, all of the hard-working marshals as well. That's it then from Alton Park. We'll be back with you again in 2 weeks from Donington for the next rounds of the Intelligent Money British GT Championship.